Meet Marvin Sanguinetti. Dr. Sanguinetti is a Christian theologian with over 34 years experience working with 3 major denominations within the Pentecostal faith tradition. For the last 23 years, he has dedicated himself to Christian academic and theological education for undergraduate and graduate students, and equipping various Christian communities in theology and related studies. He currently lectures for partnerships approved by Roehampton and Newman Universities in London. Dr. Sanguinetti earned a bachelor's degree in theology and religious studies from Roehampton University, a master's degree in biblical studies from Heythrop College, University of London, and a Ph.D. where he pursued a hermeneutical inquiry into Jewish and Christian Trinitarian-Monotheistic categories. Pastor Sanguinetti pastors a small but vibrant fellowship of believers, that is, New Life Apostolic Ministries. He has been doing this since 2001. He loves to read, he loves gymnastics and meeting people. He is also married and has 3 children. Today on Defying the Odds, we speak with Dr. Marvin Sanguinetti. Hi, Doc. Welcome to Defying the Odds.
Thank you very much. It is a privilege to share with you on this wonderful program, Defying the Odds.
Awesome. It's great to have you. So, Doc, you're in JA. I understand you're in Jamaica. How has it been going?
Indeed, I am in the wonderful country and island of Jamaica, the land of my birth.
Awesome.
It has been going great.
Wonderful, great. All right, so talk to us about where you were born. You said you are Jamaican by birth. We want to hear where you were actually born, where you grew up. Talk to us about that.
Wait, you want me to talk it in a patois? Oh, sorry. You want me to,
That's fine.
Right. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, definitely. And I've lived at a few places in Jamaica, of course. Born and bred, grew up in Kingston, in some of the ghetto areas too. Orange Street, Waterhouse, Olympic Way are places where I've lived, and off Slipe Road as well, just below Crossroads. Yeah, just below Crossroads, Tarrington Bridge, that area. Yeah, so I'm used to Jamaican lifestyle.
Okay, so who did you grow up with?
Who did I grow up with in terms of parents?
Parents, right.
Yes, I grew up with my mom and my dad, but my mom, of course, seeking better income and better life, migrated to the Cayman Islands back in the 80s. And so we had a connection between Grand Cayman and Jamaica, sometimes going back and forth.
Oh, okay, great. So what about high school? Where did you go to high school?
All right, our high school, my high school was at St. Joseph's, and actually it was a sacrifice, if I may put that in, for my mother at that particular time, seeing that I didn't do particularly well through the all-age school, secondary school context. She sacrificed financially and sent me to a private high school, St. Joseph's High School, Collins Green Avenue, just off the Halfway Tree Road. So that's where I went to high school.
Okay, so where did you go to primary school?
Okay, well, there is a primary school called, I always mistake the name. I sometimes say Drewsland and sometimes we say Jewsland, right? But that is of, when you go to the boulevard, just the Boulevard Malines Road, that kind of an area. That's where I went to primary school.
Okay. So what was high school like for you? You said you had to go to a private high school because apparently the public system wasn't working for you. What was happening with you in the public school?
Well, what it was at the time, I've always been a kind of bright child, you know, always wanting to learn, wanting to be inquisitive and inquiring and stuff of that nature. But I kind of played around, you know, messed about, as we say in the UK, and watched my friends pass many of their exams, helped some of them to do so, while I didn't do very well at all. So I ended up at an academy as a substitute. And even there, the grades that I received wasn't very pleasant, wasn't very, it couldn't take me forward, you know, a few C's and B's and stuff of that nature. And I knew that I was better than that. So my mom made the sacrifice, sent me to St. Joseph's, and you know, I decided that, actually it's the opposite way around, went to St. Joseph's, then went to National Academy. So I still didn't get the grades that I wanted in the private school, but went to the academy and tried to improve that. That still didn't work because I didn't feel as if I was putting my everything into the education and being the smart child that God has, you know, made me, if I can use that term, say that with humility, really.
Okay. So when you went over to the private school, did
Right.
you improve?
Yes, actually, to a certain degree, I did improve, but not necessarily academically, because my grades, as I said, wasn't what I had anticipated. I was still in the B's and C's category rather than in the A category. And so what did improve, though, I will say, Latoya, is that my interpersonal skills, St. Joseph's gave me that ability to interact with various people groups and, you know, and so on, you know, building my confidence. And, you know, what was good at St. Joseph's was that they had a good, I think, a career advisory kind of a setup. So even though you didn't do too well academically, you were always, I would say, rooted in the right direction as to how to go about improving that. And so I set out to be an accountant, interestingly enough.
Yes.
Yes, an accountant. I worked in that for, in the UK for 6 years up to trial balance. Yes.
Okay. So when you left high school, right?
Yes.
You would have left high school. You started working as an accountant in Jamaica prior to migrating.
No, when I left St. Joseph's, I still felt there were more I could do. There was more I could do to improve my grades. So I went to National Academy down Duke Street, right? So as to see if I can do these grades better, but it still didn't work. In fact, when I migrated, I'm sure you will come to that. When I migrated to redo my O-levels in later life. So think about that. So I was already in my 20s. Doing O-levels. Meanwhile, much of our children, you know, by the time they reach 18, they've 17, 18, they've finished their A-levels, right?
Yes.
Back then. So it was not an easy road for me academically.
Okay, so let's talk about how you ended up in the UK.
Okay, so my mother, the wonderful person she was, and my father, of course, he was exceptionally brilliant in terms of knowledge, you know, helped me to open my vocabulary. But my mother specifically, because she was abroad, she recognized that, of course, I've gone through the school system, high school, private high school, and I'm still not progressing the way I should do. So she said, you know what, she's going to connect me with my aunt in the United Kingdom. And let's see if I can go there and maybe some things will change. So that's the first introduction to the UK. I came to the UK to study for 1 year. And don't ask me how long I've been here, 31 years, even though I'm in Jamaica right now, but I've been there for 31 years. I'm not sure if that's good or not good. Yeah, it's great.
Being the Jamaican that I am, you should know my answer.
I do actually. Yes, come back to Jamaica, right? It's the best place to be.
Yes,
Of course it
yes.
is. Yes, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you went to the UK, you went back to school, you were trying to
Yes.
go over these O levels.
Yes.
So how did that go? Were you successful?
Now, do you want to, the picture, this is going to shock you. So I don't know if it was the problem with the school or it was with my level of learning, my IQ, or what it was. I told you, I thought I was a brilliant child.
Yes.
But I scraped 2 A's at O level. English being one of my very favorite subjects, never always speak it because of the wonderful Jamaican Creole and patois, but you know, but I did well in English and oral English as well. Economics, I got to be there. And I would say I ended up with about 5 O levels. Now, remember, these are not A levels in my 20s, these are O levels. So already you can see I'm logging behind in the educational system in my pursuits. You know, so yeah, I got changed a few grades, but not again like I would like to. And don't ask me what happened to A levels, because this will shock people later on as you pursue with asking the question.
Yes, tell me about the A levels. You took those?
I didn't, up to today's date, I never took a single A level, not one. And later on, when you begin to discuss the other areas of learning, you will wonder, and others viewing might wonder, how is it that I got onto doing those studies without A levels? That in itself is a miracle, right? You know, but
wow.
we'll give thanks for that.
So you went back to school, you managed to scrape through 5 O levels.
Yes.
And did you do after that?
Well, after I finished the O levels, I decided that I am going to, and here comes the what I would call the hybrid of my educational pursuits, the mixed, right? Guess what I ended up doing? I started studying at a college called the Hotel and Travel Training College. So I wanted to be an accountant, ended up studying in the Hotel Travel Training College in a place in the UK called Kensington, very affluent area. And I studied what you call, with British Airways, BA1, BA2, these are levels, IATA apta qualifications to become a travel agent, to own my own travel agent, right?
Okay.
And I was successful not at owning the travel agent, but I was successful in working in several travel agencies, including the popular UK Eurolines, which is a coach company that sends people all over to Europe and elsewhere. So I've spent a lot of time doing that. While I got the proposal throughout the spirit, working in travel, to work as an accountant was leaving a company, actually an accounts manager, and I heard about the job and I applied for that. So I was doing a bit of travel on one side and accounts bookkeeping on the other side. So yeah, a very colorful,
yes,
very, very busy life, as you can see it, working and studying.
Okay, great. All right, so tell me now about your journey into where you're at now in terms of the switching over from being an accountant and a travel agent to now being a theologian. What propelled your desire to study theology in the first place?
Okay.
Why theology?
Why theology is a very good question. In actual fact, from Emmanuel Apostolic Church, pastored by the late Bishop S.U. Thomas is where I'm from. Now pastored by, I think, definitely by Bishop Everton Thomas now. So I started out under Bishop S.U. Thomas, and we had a little church library when we moved over to our new building from 36 National Hero Circle to 12 Slipe Road in Jamaica, right? So that little library, I used to go into the library and read books, and just to let you know, I have one right here as well, right? Always reading books. And that gave me a desire to wanting to know more theologically. We had some brilliant Sunday school teachers, Alan Russell, Dr. Lyndon Johnson, some of you are familiar. These are guys who were just very brilliant, and they motivated us to do the research. So when I came to the UK, the desire for theology, at least on a personal level, was always there amidst working in travel or doing some accounts. It was always there. So you know what I did? I decided back in 2000 that I am going to, alongside work, I am going to do an undergraduate degree in theology and religious studies. That started the journey with academia and scholarly enterprise, if you please. Yeah, so I did my undergraduate studies at Roehampton University. That started the whole process. 3 years. Actually, it wasn't 3 years. This course should be a 3-year course, but I started a little bit later in 2000. So I did a 3-year course in just over 2.5 years. And unlike, would you like me to continue to just share some more?
Yes, go ahead.
Unlike many of the students, you need 360 credits in the UK system to get a degree over 3 years. I entered the university with 20 credits, so I still need 340. And do you know, within that 2.5 years, I think I might have done what, 28, 29 modules. You're talking about subjects, right? And that was very, very difficult to do. Most students would do about 18 subjects or even 24. I did 29, right? So that has contributed to my theological learning and the scope and breadth of my theological learning, unlike a lot of other. So you'd have theologians, Latoya, you have theologians who studies theology alone. I engage the world's religions, such as if you do Buddhism, Sikhism, Hinduism, on that cluster. If you go over to the other cluster, the main 6, which is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. So I focus on other things. I did the sociology of religion. So I look at Marx and Durkheim and folks of that nature, the psychology of religion, right? So you talk about Freud and Carl Jung and William James and those names. So the breadth of my undergraduate studies, doing about 29 modules, just broadened the spectrum for me. And as a result, that has put me currently, in terms of employability, in a good place, even in some sense, respectfully above some peers who only concentrate in one area of the discipline.
Wow. And you did all of that while working?
While working, yes. I must have been crazy, right?
Wow, so you would work in the daytime and go in the evenings?
Okay, so the days of research and study, they varied. So you might do like a 9 to 3, and then you would do the afternoon work, or you might do a 3-day, say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you have Thursday, Friday, Saturday to work. So it was not easy at all, you know. Wow. And you're talking about at this stage, I am still not yet naturalized as a citizen in the United Kingdom. It took us some time before that. Was I naturalized? Oh, well, no, 90 to, yes, I was naturalized. Actually, it's 98 that I became naturalized. So I've only became naturalized recent, right? So throughout those years, you couldn't work full time in the UK. No, you can't do that. They allow you 15 hours as a student. And after that, you can work. But if you work over that, then the UK border agency, or home office, as we used to call it, if they ever catch you working, you're right down here back in Jamaica.
Wow.
Yes.
And when you talk about being naturalized, do you mean like a citizen, what they would call citizenship in the US?
Well, it's the process leading on to a citizenship, which means when you become naturalized, I think you stay like about a few months, 6 months or so, a year, and you're able to claim some of the benefits that the normal UK-born person could claim. But when you become a citizen, you have all the rights of citizenship. So naturalization slightly leading to citizenship. They're not the same things.
Okay, okay. So at this time, we're back at the undergrad stage.
Right.
At the undergrad stage, were you married at the time? Did you have a family at this time?
Married and married, and in actual fact, wife at the time was pregnant with the third, well, let me say, so you have 96 first child, 99 second child, and this was 2002. So remember I told you I started 2000, right? So in 2002, wife pregnant while studying at the same university.
While studying at the same university?
At the same university. with the belly, as we call it. And can you imagine driving and you having to get to university either before her or she having to get to university before you, and you know how that is, the challenges that comes with that. So in fact I would say this, Latoya, that the university has it recorded as the first couple who has done that, and especially with a wife pregnant.
Wow.
So they've written this up in the university, what they call the bulletin, so as they give out. Yes.
Awesome.
So there it is. Yes.
That's
a lot
commendable.
Of
That's commendable. You see,
but we give thanks.
When we want something, if we really want to do something, we have to find a way to get it done. And that's commendable. So you did this at Roehampton University, and you also did your MA at the same university, and you are now working with that university along with the Newman University, I believe. Okay. Let's talk about that.
The MA program was not done at Roehampton. That was done at the Heythrop, University of London.
Okay.
So the University of London is a federal university that oversees several other universities in the UK. One of them being Heythrop College, the University of London. That is in a place called Kensington. And I did that primarily, and this might be surprising to you, but I did that primarily after Theology and Religious Studies from the undergrad. I did the master's at Heythrop specifically in order to become some kind of an apologist for my faith tradition, because I recognized that there were not a lot of us within our faith tradition, you know, the one that I'm from, that actually matriculated in biblical studies. So they do a bit of theology, they do a bit of Christian theology as well, but no one studies biblical theology. Biblical theology is not studying the Bible as we know. But what we do, Latoya, in biblical theology is we interpret the interpreter's interpretation. So just follow that a bit. We interpret the interpreter's interpretation. So what we are doing is actually critical assessment of why some of the theologians come to the conclusions that they arrive at. And then we ask whether or not the sources that they have used within to lead them to those conclusions, that they have used it appropriately. So it was kind of a technical kind of a study. And that actual, in fact, when we did that course, I think we had about 19 of us that year that started the course. And I don't know if some of them deferred their courses or postponed, but it's only 3 of us from that group graduated. So it wasn't easy. So some people will hear biblical studies and they say, oh yeah, I'm going to study the Bible. And just to find out that you are actually studying the critical aspects of scriptures, the who, what, when, where, why kind of an appraisal of the Bible. And it was very good. Hard, but good.
Wow. And that took you, what, 1 year to complete?
Well, it took me 1 year. It actually took me 2 years part-time, but it should have taken me 1 year full-time. But I kind of deferred a little bit and then write my dissertation a little bit later on.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So you now work with Roehampton University. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Get into lecturing, teaching. So by now you would have moved on from being a flight attendant and an accountant. So now you're into academia. How
did I am, yes. Okay, let me respond to that. Well, Roehampton, when we say work with Roehampton University, we are in their partnership. So you're not on campus. They have partnerships that is what we would call affiliated with Roehampton. So the programs that we run are undergraduate or postgraduate programs that are validated by Roehampton and Newman University. So in a sense, we're employed with them, but we're employed with the partnerships as well, if you follow that. So if in order for us to be authenticated, I have to send my CVs to Roehampton as well as the partnership. Then we have to, I'm sure you know what CPD is, continuing professional development. We have to send those to both Roehampton as well. So it's kind of a conglomerate of both groups working together. So sometimes you see on my Facebook, so we just put Roehampton because they are the overarching, overseeing body that validates us. So that's what that means.
So so it's like you have a school. Right?
Yes.
There is a school that is affiliated with Roehampton.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Right. So was this school founded by you or who?
Okay, so the school initially is, you know, you have independent theological schools. In the UK, you have a few of those, primarily, limited number of those among African Caribbeans. We happen to be one of the niche schools that is affiliated with Roehampton that way. So in a sense, when a person graduates from the school of which we're part, being independent, they are given a Roehampton degree. Do you follow what's going on here? So if, and the same with the other universities. So if you graduate doing particular modules or course, you are given the degree that is bespoke to that university. You see how it works? So you could, it works like this in the UK. You could be affiliated to 2 or 3 universities, provided the programs that you offer are of the same academic standard as the main university. The good thing about it is, I have also done some stuff with Roehampton University by way of presentation of papers and stuff like that as well. So I'm not too far detached.
Okay, great. So as it relates to the PhD journey now, this 6 years, let's walk through that part of it. So
well, you know,
satisfied with just a master's degree, you wanted to go on to doing a PhD, and of course, that is a long and tedious journey. Let's talk about that. What is it that you've done the PhD? Just remind listeners what it is that you did, the PhD, and how was that journey for you?
I'm very passionate, as you can see, when it comes to education, primarily my thesis that I wrote. When I started out, I recognized there was a kind of disparity between those within a certain tradition that is commonly called Trinitarian perspective. I came out and I'm in the Oneness Pentecostal tradition, the Apostolic tradition, and so on, right? So I noticed there was this ongoing thing within and among our churches. I wanted to find out, honestly, what are the issues really? What are the things that divide us? What are the things that unite us? What are the things that separate us? Primarily within Trinitarian Pentecostalism in comparison to Oneness Pentecostalism or the Apostolic Church. So I started out my PhD thesis to look at a comparative understanding between Oneness Pentecostalism and Trinitarian theology. Now, guess what happened, Latoya? Having started this out, my supervisors, I've got 2 supervisors, one first and one second, and then an external examiner. And so this supervisor, Dr. Neil MacDonald, I'll call his name. Dr. Neil MacDonald said, okay, let's go with that topic. And do you know, I started reading the books and the relevant materials, primary sources, secondary sources. When I reached, after 2 years of research and having written 40,000 words. Now, watch this, 40,000 words. One day, I was called into a meeting by my 2 supervisors, Dr. Neil MacDonald, you know, and my second supervisor, right? Dr. Richard Burgess. And they called me in and said, Marvin, we want you to scrap all of that. Now, you know what was happening at that time. I was swinging on the chandeliers and I was seeing the stars in Milky Way, you know, and Gabriel and Michael, they were just on either side. I was so upset and angry, having written 40,000 words. Think about writing a 1,000 words essay. and I wrote 40,000 words. And they say, you know what? Scrap that. Get rid of that. And this is what I want you to write on. And out of that came my thesis, and I'll explain a little bit more. The title of my thesis is A Hermeneutical Inquiry of Jewish and Christian Trinitarian-Monotheistic Categories with special reference to Oneness Pentecostalism. Don't worry, Ph.D. always sounds out there and crazy. That's how the titles are. Do you know what eventually happened? My supervisors who I got angry with, they were both correct, because right now I have produced over 100,000 words, 397 pages, my PhD thesis, and it's a hybrid thesis, which means I have combined in what I call my methodology, 3 things together, which now both my supervisors have contacted me before I came over here, of course, to pay the last respects to my dad. They have contacted me and suggested 2 publishers to me, UK publishers, well-known ones, to publish my thesis. This doesn't happen often with supervisors asking students to do this, or past students. So that, you know, that journey, though it was tedious as you've described, actually worked out in the end, and is working out to be the best decision, despite the challenges that I've had to do it. You know, so I hope that kind of helped in responding to your question.
Yes, let's talk about the challenges. I saw something that said you worked 3 jobs while doing it. Is it 3 jobs?
Well, you know, no, well, several jobs that you work. So you have a part-time job, you have you have a, you know, in the UK, when you come in the UK, people do cleaning jobs. So I wasn't doing that, but I'm just saying they do that. You know, you when I was a student at 2021, you get up in the morning, you do a 2-hour cleaning, you go to, and some people would front, I'm not going to clean. I'm not doing that stuff. You know, but I'm trying to alleviate my mother who's abroad working. I'm trying to get her not to send me any more money. I'm trying to make sure I do it myself. So you're doing these things, and we get in that system, Latoya, where we work to help ourselves. And by the way, you get in the UK, you better work to help yourself. Because you know family, right? They'll help you like for the first few months, but after that, they'll open the door, right? You better go look a job, right? And stuff like that. So the challenges were there, and in the midst of that, as you might have seen on social platform, while I was doing my my undergraduate studies, I actually contracted in my later life a rare form of chickenpox, not just chickenpox, but a rare form that took me to the hospital. I was, you know, Jamaicans, we can be proud people from, you know how we are. I literally, it was so terrible. The chickenpox was all over me, my head, it became infected. I literally didn't even want the people of my church to see me. Nobody, I don't want them to see me as that. But nonetheless, you know, I persevered. I mean, my university asked me, can you come do this interview? Because you wrote some essays, and we thought your essays were brilliant. We wanted to do a little short write-up for us and do the interview. And hence you saw that picture I put on the social platform with me with the chicken pox spots all over me on the front cover of Roehampton University.
Well, you know, Doc, when I looked at the picture, I said to myself, sometimes because of our own feelings, we just attention to things that people wouldn't see, you know.
Yeah, like the hairline.
Yeah, because I really didn't notice that you had chicken pox.
Yes, I did. And you could say, I actually messed with them a little bit. So I mean, not now, but it left a couple spots on me.
Right. But it was actually when you pointed it out.
Your attention.
Right. I looked again at the picture to see if I really have chicken pox, you know. So it was,
and did you see my hairline? My hairline was down here, and I think my hairline, I became almost like the Shaolin monks.
Wow. Oh my God. But even though you were going through that, you were still doing the assignments. You never quit.
Yes, never quit. in my undergrad, and one of the things my mom and dad, but primarily my mom again, invested in me. She never gave up. She's always persistent, always consistent, knocks in life and stuff of that nature. And she always seems to get up and get going again. So that kind of an inspiration, I think, helped me as well. In fact, I dedicated my PhD thesis firstly to my mom and then to my dad. My dad gave me the apparatus, the academic apparatus, but my mom gave me that enthusiasm and encouragement and gave me the first, think about this, Latoya, the first 2,200 pounds in a foreign country to study in 1990. Do you know how much 2,200 pounds was at that time?
No.
That was a whole lot of money. So I had to make good of that. And the challenging thing for me is, to give you the challenge, is the day I submitted my thesis, my mom died.
Wow.
The actual day. So you think about that. When we went to, of course, she died in the Cayman Islands, so I had to go there. When I went to, make sure see her off and the family and all that stuff, the tears that flow from my face was a result of the fact that this woman, this wonderful lady, whether she's seen from here or above there, I have reached to, by the grace of God and her support and others, to the
Yes.
top tier of the educational fraternity.
Wow.
So that
I think she knew you would have gotten there.
I believe so. Yes.
Yes,
I believe so.
yes. So let's talk some more about the work that you had to do now in terms of working those jobs for the PhD studies. How do you handle that? Because if you're doing 3 jobs and you're doing a lot of research and you have a lot of writing and you're a family man, how did you
the pastor
that balance? What did you do?
and the pastor as well at the time.
And the pastor, yeah.
So what I had to do, and this is if you want to get me frustrated, if people know this that are around me, I cannot work with disorganization, right? So I created a time management system. What I would do when I get up, and some people say this I talk about child psychology. Some people say this is a sickness, right? Maybe Freud and Carl Jung would think this is a sickness, but I'm very systematized in my approach. So I had a time management, a timetable. This I do on Monday, this I do on Tuesday, this I do on Wednesday, and that follows me all through my academic life. Of course, you never always stick to everything, but I try as best as possible, to work with a timetable. And one of the key things I try to adhere to is deadline. So if you're out there and you are studying, let me just remember this statement. Procrastination is the thief of time. Procrastination is the thief of time. The other thing that helps me, you might know it, Latoya, the 5 Ps, right? Proper planning prevents poor performance. Proper planning prevents poor performance. If you plan, you will, if you're playing darts, right, and you throw the dart, you might not get the bullseye, but you might get near to it. But if you're far away from the dartboard, you're more likely to miss it. So don't aim to miss. Aim to at least achieve something. If you don't get what you want now, keep working at it, because working at it with a system and with a time frame, you will achieve. And I am a believer that anyone, I am not, I know some people say, oh, well, Marvin Sanguinetti, you are unique. But I've always said to people, you can achieve what I've achieved and more. If you have a system, if you are dedicated, and if you are committed to it by doing the things you ought to do to make you successful. So yes, I dedicated my time for the PhD. It wasn't always easy, Latoya, I'm telling you.
Yes.
There are times you felt, my God, what in the world did I get myself into, right? And you do feel like giving up from time to time, but that's the time I lent on my supervisors. In terms of pastoral care, I'm feeling this way. I'm not feeling like I'm getting any headway. I've read enough books. And by the way, Latoya, I talk a lot, so please, guide me when to stop. One of the things I'll tell you, in my field of PhD, and I need to say this for everybody, a PhD graduate or a person who writes a PhD research, we do not know everything about every subject. So we must adopt. Sometimes we don't even call ourselves doctors, right? If the people usually call themselves doctors, it's either a doctor by, it's a honorary doctorate they're not earned, generally speaking. Some people do that, right? Not everyone. And that's good that you've achieved that, or that you've earned that. I mean, that you've achieved that. But to earn a doctorate, generally those people are humble. Because we know a PhD is like you're in an ocean and you take water from the ocean to a reservoir, to the faucet or the taps that is in your house, the pipes, and you just let that tap drip into a spoon. The PhD is the spoon, Latoya. So we are humble because we realize by the time you publish your 397-page, 100,000 words thesis, somebody else is already contradicting it who never met you.
Yes.
Right? So you have to assume a posture of humility. And so, yes, it was hard, but we are always humble. We're always reading books. We're always updating our knowledge of primary and secondary sources within the field.
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
yeah, go ahead.
That's the thing with academia. When you become a scholar, it doesn't seem, it is like a continuous studying.
Indeed.
Always have to keep abreast of the latest research.
Indeed, yes.
Is out there if you want to remain relevant. And it is said that it's only 2% of the world's population who actually pursue a doctoral.
Really? I know that I did not know that.
Right. So you are in the 2%.
Well, then I'm going to have to put my helmet on because you're making my head swell bigger. I'm going to keep it humble, right? Well, give God thanks for that.
2% of the world's population, because it is so tedious. A lot of people, they shy away from it, or they will start and they never finish because the amount of discipline that it takes to do that. So
could I explain a little further about what the thesis, how it's structured or something like that? So
sure, go right ahead.
Because the thesis is, it's not an essay, it's not a long essay. It's a unique project. And the key areas of the thesis is not simply you have your chapters, writing chapters. I mean, people can get a book and write chapters. It's not a book. A thesis is something that you set out to defend. It is something that you set out to verify, to authenticate, and to prove by using the relevant primary and secondary sources. To do so, you are going to have to adopt the appropriate methodology for that subject. For example, let me explain what I mean by methodology for that subject, right? You cannot pour a certain type of, every type of gas in your car for it to work. So in the UK, we have unleaded, we have 4-star, and here in Jamaica as well. So if you pour the wrong gas in your car, if it's a diesel and you put gas in petrol in there, we call it petrol, right? You're going to damage the engine and the car won't work. So you've got to choose the right method that will make the car drivable, if I can use that term. So your methodology. And guess how you learn the methodology? By reading everyone or most people within that field that has used a similar or same methodology before. So you can imagine a person like me, I have read almost, I would say 80 to 90% of the journals that covers, academic journals that covers my subject. So it's on you, so when my students, my undergraduate students present their work and their bibliography and references, and they have books in them, they can't cheat very easily in that area, right? Because those journals they're referencing, I would have somewhat been familiar with them. So the methodology is important. Your method is important, right? For example, let me give another quick example and I stop on that. You can't simply go to the, you call the clinic out here, we call it the GP, our general practitioners you can't just go to the GP and he or she gave you a prescription, then you go to the pharmacy and you say, give me any medicine. You can't do it. If you do that, you will kill yourself, right? So you've got to make sure you take the prescribed medicine that is on that prescription and the pharmacist must give you what's on there. So in other words, when you do a PhD, you're going to have to obey the prescription. Right? You can't just do because you feel like you want to do. And can I say, I'm glad you asked Latoya what my PhD was, because most people who, that 2% you talked about, if you want to know if people are genuinely study, ask them exactly what you asked me. What was your PhD thesis on? You notice how I'm, by God's grace, passionate about my subject and keep talking? Because when you do a PhD, when you spend 6.5 years doing one thing,
you know what you've done.
It must be in you. You know, you don't need to read it off a paper, it's there. You know, so yeah, it's a journey, and you know, if I can inspire one person, listen, you know, it's worth it all.
Yes, awesome. So let's talk about church life now and your life as a pastor. Let's talk about that. How is pastoral ministry for you? How have you found that? And you started out as a pastor in what, 2011?
No, 2001.
2001, okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So that
you know, so I'm shaking my head
years,
already.
but that's 20 years too. So that's 20 years of pastoral ministry. Let's
now, you notice I'm shaking my head, right? let me be frank with
that's
you.
what you want to leave, right?
No. Let me tell you, my previous pastor here in the UK, right? He used to give a threefold analogy, a tripart analogy. And he said, when you become a pastor, there are three things in the first 3 years. The first year, the saints, the believers, they idolize you. The second year, they criticize you. And the third year, they paralyze you.
Oh my God. So what happens after the third year? Do you remain paralyzed? Is there ever a time when you're nursed back to health?
We better come back to health, right? But pastoring, I would say it is something most pastors will tell you, we never set out to be pastors, but it's a call that God has placed on our lives, and it is the passion and one of the things I always say to people, don't just think about, I don't even like the word pastor per se, not because it is not in the Bible. It's in the Bible once, Ephesians 4:11, right? In English version. But the actual Greek word for pastor is poimen, P-O-I-M-E-N. And the word is shepherd, because you cannot genuinely, Latoya, be a pastor in the English word without shepherding and loving people. So I found myself that I was caring, and to this day I still do that. I take the phone up myself, call, don't depend on others. With a small fellowship, I call them myself. Hi, how you doing? How's things? And I feel that was kind of a God cutting cutting me out, shaping me into the pastoral ministry by the root of caring for other people. So it's not just about the exegesis and the homiletics and the hermeneutics and the pulpitarian and all that. That's good. But what happens when you're not in the pulpit? So pastoring has been a challenge, you know, because 7 brothers, 7 different minds, you know, wherever there are people, there are going to be challenges. But there are challenges that I would say that help me to become better. Of course, you have a few hard knocks, you know, they say the world of hard knocks, you know, pastoring is like that. You're going to have your ups and downs. But
so
you know,
was this a fold that was started by you, like a congregation that began with you, or did you inherit this church?
Okay, we started from scratch.
Okay.
We started from scratch in a sense. We were, and I hate to say breakaway, but we're not a breakaway. We were in a particular organization, for wisdom, I won't say the name, but we were in a particular organization. There were some challenges there. We tried to rectify that to the higher echelons and stuff. And, you know, if your time is run out at a well, I'm not telling people to jump ship and to do what we call kangaroo Christianity. Don't jump around. I'm not in that, right? I'm still from the old school. But then we found out, a few of us that, well, a couple of us actually, as ministers, that we weren't being effective here. And there were some issues that if we continued, we're either going to stifle ourselves or we're going to end up stifling them. And so the other ministers started a small fellowship together. I started a small fellowship, and I didn't want to pastor. All I wanted to do is to maintain my spiritual sanity with a small prayer group. And I did not take, actually, I think 4 persons from the congregation where we were, of about 400 people came with us. So it's not a matter of splitting a church and stuff. I didn't want a pastor. I just wanted to keep my sanity. You see what I mean? And so we did have those challenges. We started from scratch. We started with a very small congregation. We broadened that out to a connection that we have through my Bible college. I haven't said that yet. I started a Bible college previously. We broadened that out through our Bible college to Africa. And so one of the bishops, before he passed in Africa, asked me to help his church there. Even though I'm a young pastor, I'm not a bishop. They call me that, but I never liked the title, right? But the bishop over there, before he died, I went to Africa, and he said, that part of Africa actually, and he said to me, I just want you to help us out with Bible college. And I started doing that, and then he died, and the pastors there called the meeting and invited me from the UK to come, and then made it legitimate that I would help to just I don't use the word oversee, but just to work together with them. And do you know what? They have 29 churches in let me tell you the places, in Zambia alone. 29 churches in Zambia. We have churches as a fellowship in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. We have churches in Botswana, and we have churches in South Africa. So we don't say I oversee, I just say we work together as a fellowship. And yeah, so pastoring as a
churches, what is the population like? For the church?
The larger church in Zambia, Lusaka, it's in a place called Kabanana, like banana, right? Kabanana. And that church, I would say, would maybe seat about 300 people, because in the city, but the churches are small, but again, when they are many, if I can use that term, small, but many, if you put it that way. But again, I have not been to all the churches. That's the other thing, you see. So I've only met the pastors who come from the churches when we have like a graduation, Bible college graduation there, or we have a conference there when I can go and stuff of that nature. Yeah.
With COVID now, though, how do you navigate this environment as a pastor?
Could I say, Latoya, I just had an undergraduate student who happened to get a upper second class, a 2-1, marked his work, Caucasian student. And his thesis was on how should the church respond in a post-COVID-19 environment.
I like it.
So I think I have some response from that, drawing on his own thesis as well, in dissertation. COVID-19 has taught the church that the church is versatile. In one of my research, and I've posted a synopsis of this on social platforms, I think the church in the New Testament is mentioned in terms of meeting. I think it is 23 or 24 times. I need to double check it. And do you know, about 19 times out of those, Latoya, it was in a house. So if we get intimidated because we can't meet in a building, we are undermining the versatility of the ecclesia, the called out assembly, right? The church is more than edifice, even though coming together is integral to discipleship, to spiritual growth, to encouragement, and the idea of the Bible saying, iron sharpens iron. Never understood that text until, you'll get me preaching on here. Never understood this text until I cast my mind back in Jamaica here. We in England, we call it machete, but over in Jamaica, we say machete. We used to have a file with the machete, as we said, so the iron sharpens the iron. So you need community, and you need that interaction, and so on and so forth. So I find COVID-19 a challenge because many pastors, many leaders have lost their lives and stuff of that nature, the reduction, the limitation in terms of expressive worship and all that. But the church should not be intimidated. Ever since the first century, the Greco-Roman society, the church has been versatile, right? It has survived the Vespasian, the Nero, all the various emperors. What makes us think that, COVID-19 is going to kill the church off? Think about the Black Death, right? Think about the Spanish flu, the church, SARS, Ebola. We've come through all of that. And I guarantee you the end is not yet. We're going to come through this as well.
Right. If anything, we would have learned too how we can facilitate other persons. So I'm thinking back to the post-COVID, and I'm thinking that we have now learned, because Zoom was always there, but who was using it? Just probably a few persons in Jamaica, would have been using Zoom to do meetings, but it wasn't so popular. And if you didn't come to church, you just didn't come. But now you hardly have any excuse to not come, because even if the church is open and people are there, you can come on Zoom. Right? You don't have any excuse anymore to say, I didn't come to church today. You can come.
I tell you what.
Because you can.
I tell you what. You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh at this one, right? It's interesting, Latoya, right? When the radio came out, it was the mark of the beast. When my mom brought the first black and white TV, it was strange. When the colored TV come on, that was certainly the devil, right? Now, when computer came, remember Y2K, how everything was going to crash in year 2000? Yes. People were literally, this is the 666 mark of the beast. Guess what happened? The mark of the beast has now found its way on our pulpits. Right? So we have computers, we have laptops, we have iPhones. We've got to use, in my view, humbly, we've got to use the access we have. And can I say something? Could it be, let me ask a question this way. Could it be that God is giving some of our elderly saints a reprieve? Those saints that struggle to get on that bus from Portmore to Kingston, or from Brixton to Camberwell in London, or wherever, right? Those ones, could it be a means of reprieve that they don't have to take communion in the building? They can have the portable communion right in their homes, and we do the same thing and with the same presence of God. So there's a lot of, we've got to learn to be, I'm going to give you a quick thing and tell me if I've gone on too long, right?
No, go ahead.
Here is a revelatory understanding that I got a few years ago about forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. We normally say this means that we must come to church. Well, let me ask you, you're doing the interview, but let me ask you, right, Latoya? Do we know what an assembly plant is? So if you buy a Ford car, a Mazda, or a Mitsubishi, or whatever, you say Peugeot over here, but a Peugeot. If you buy these cars, if you go to the plant, what you would recognize in the making of the cars at these factories, or the plants as we call them, is that the person who makes the door, or the person who puts in the engine, they have been doing the very job for 30, 40 years, nothing else. All they do is fix doors. All they do is put in engines. All they do is put on wheels, or put on wipers, or whatever. They do nothing else. So years ago, in researching forsake not the, notice it didn't say forsake not the assembly. It says forsake not the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is. You can be gathered in one place and still not be assembled like the car. Did you get it?
Yes.
In other words, you can be a door and still not be on the car. You can be an engine. In fact, you can be the whole car, and without the ignition working, we are going absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
So when we talk about forsake not the assembling of ourselves together, yes, it's important for us to come together. That's part of the text. But it also means that when we come together, all the parts of the car must be fully functioning and assembled properly.
Wow.
You see how the text looks? You see, we don't look at the text exegetically. When you look at the text by exegesis, you realize that being assembled together is not simply being in the same building. There are people who are how many times you've been to church, Latoya, and people, you and your husband, people are in the building and their minds are on the rice and peas and chicken and jerk chicken and all that.
Oh, yes.
We're not even paying attention to what we're saying sometimes. So we've got to be assembled together.
Yes, and you better pay attention to the clock, because after a particular time, people tune out. And
Indeed, yes, you better.
yes, your minds are somewhere else.
Indeed, indeed.
So my last question, Doc, to you, where do you see yourself now going forward for years to come? Where do you see yourself? What would you like to do? What would you like to say, you know, this is what I'd want to spend the rest of my life doing? What is that one thing?
Very good question, and a probing one, which I think is very nice to ask. My vision is educationally based. I preach well by God's grace. I do that well. But at heart, I believe God is elevating the ministry of teaching as one of the apostolic ministry. By apostolic, I don't mean denominationally. I mean apostolic in the New Testament sense of the context, the authoritative sense. So I see myself educating this and the next generation theologically. In other words, so that they are able to do proper, what we would call apologetics. They are able to solidly defend the Christian faith. And the way in which I'm going to leave my legacy, if the Lord should spare my life a few more years, is through writing, right? So at the moment, I'm letting the cat out the bag on YouTube and elsewhere. At the moment, I'm working on three projects, and one of them is not theologically driven. One of them is about what, similar to this interview, it's talking about African Caribbean contributions to the educational system in the UK. So I'm working on something on that basis. This is the first I've ever said it publicly, but I'm also working on my thesis to make that published into a published work, a book. But in my dream and vision is to continue to do my educational pursuit. That is in the academic sense. But in the spiritual sense, I think that the Lord, and I use the word think very humbly, you know, some people say, I know, but I'm saying I think the Lord is kind of driving me into the area of mentoring those who are matriculating in education or any sense of spirituality with the church. One last thing I will say, one of the things that drove me to study as well, Latoya, I was in a place here in the UK, there in the UK called Peckham, and I saw on a table of a Muslim guy several books and booklets. I happen to have read about 80% of them on the table. But this guy had his Bible. He's a Muslim, he had a Quran, but he had his Bible well marked. You know, the thumbprints in the Bible, he had his marked with various, and this thing inspired me. I said, if this is a Muslim who can handle our Bible, not his Quran, not the 114 chapters of the Quran, the Surahs, right? He's doing the Bible this way. Now, why shouldn't I pursue the religious studies, not just theology? So I started studying word religion because I recognized within the apostolic Oneness Pentecostal faith tradition, we had no one specifically that could engage Islam or could engage Hinduism or Buddhism or some of the word religions. We have a lot of theologians, we have a lot of Christian apologists, but no one who specifically zeroed in on those areas. So I started doing that. I mean, I'm not doing it now as I used to offer seminars to church on Islam and stuff like that, but I still would say that is one of the things that drove me also to do research, you know, studying word of religion. So if a Muslim was on here, maybe I would say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim or La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah or Inshallah, which means blessings and peace, right? That's
all of that means blessing and peace?
No, well, the Inshallah means blessing and peace, just like you would say Shalom. You know, when you the Muslim would say Alaykum Salam, Salam Alaykum, right? And the blessings and peace be upon you, right? But Christians, we would say bless you or praise the Lord, right? Jewish people say something Shalom, right? And so on. But the first bit that I said, really, that is a confession of a Muslim. If a Muslim heard me say that, and I believed it in my heart, they would say that I've just become a Muslim. But of course, I'm a Christian.
So what's the confession of the Muslim?
The confession of Muslims is called the Shahada. And the Shahada says in Arabic is La ilaha illallahu Muhammadan Rasul Allah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. So if you say that, you become a Muslim if you believe it in your heart. But I've quoted it somewhat in Arabic and then in English, right? So yeah, so I was really into the Islam thing and studying stuff of that nature and trying to offer some seminars to church, trying to compare the Jesus of the Quran with the Jesus of the New Testament and see what the variances were and whether or not Muslims are worshiping the same Jesus. Looked at Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, the Ahmadiyya sect, the Wahhabis, of the radical element of Islam and stuff of that nature, you know, and so on. And so those things drove me to research. You get me going today, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Beautiful evening has been, Dr. Sanguinetti, spending with you today. I am sure there is so much more that we could talk about, and perhaps in the future we'll do another sit down. You
never know, right?
Not sure, but it was so good to have you today on Defend the Odds. I want to wish you all the best as you continue with your work in theology and your work in the church. And I'm sure that your life's work will indeed bless others. I'm sure those who watch today will be inspired by your story. So thank you for stopping by on Defying the Odds.
Thank you very much, Latoya, and I appreciate and certainly enjoyed this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.